Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Torsten from the Tollis team to the blu-xperience channel. So much to talk about. I'm not even going to waste my time with the intro. Let me just say that I've been dealing with Tollis since X-Plane days.
Yeah.
And to have Tollis now in Microsoft for me is a game changer. There's so much to talk about, but I really truly want to get right into the A340. So Thorsten, welcome. And my first question is, you were contacted by Aerosoft and what happened? How are you doing? Welcome aboard, Thorsten.
Hi, XP and Blue. First of
What's
all,
up, man?
thanks for having me. What happened? It goes a while back actually. So the first time that we actually went to an FS Expo, that was in 23 in Houston, I believe. And there I actually met Winfried for the first time. We had already been selling our X-Plane products through the Aerosoft stores for basically since 2018 or 2019, something like that. So we had a business relationship with them for a long time, but I'd never actually met any of the guys. So that was the first time I then met Winfried. And yeah, short after FS Expo, I then got an email from him saying, "Hey, can we have a call? I want to discuss an idea with you." So, okay, what idea could that be? So I was wondering, like, okay. And then we did the call, and yeah, basically his question was, okay, is there a way how we can get our systems to be used in the Aerosoft Airbuses on MSFS? And at first it was a bit like, yeah, that would be a big job, which it turned out to be, right? Because we are now 2.5 years later. But yeah, so the idea was born pretty much that day, but we were not sure about the feasibility or anything like that. So the first step was a proof of concept. So just like to have this idea, okay, how can I first of all, okay, step back again. I've been coding for X-Plane since 2006. So when you look at what I've written, it's very, very intertwined with it. Like so you have X-Plane references literally everywhere. So the first part of the job, and that was part of this proof of concept phase, was like to remove or to like separate everything that's related to X-Plane into its own separate set of functions so that I have basically one big blob, which is the Airbus. And then, okay, this is all the interfacing with the simulator. And then that then allowed us to say, okay, I take out my interfacing with the simulator and I put a new interface in for a different simulator. And but yeah, so there then the big question came. We already had in X-Plane, we already had our own engine model, which I would really like to use because that has been tuned over years based on or whatever real life data I could find basically, and it's really optimized for turbofan jet engines. So it's really well. It allows me really to tune it exactly as I wanted to do, and so then when we looked in X-Plane, we used the X-Plane flight model and my engine model, and in MSFS, I did not find a way to do that.
Mm.
So, and that's why then the whole topic, okay, then the only way to do this is our own flight model. So, and that's how that then was born, that we said, okay, we need to create our own flight model, which we did together with students here from the McGill University, which is around the corner here. And yeah, so, and then once all of that was kind of running, then the proof of concept was done, and then the actual development work started. And
Wow.
now 2 years later, we're here.
That is really cool. Like one thing that stood out to me, you said you and some of your university students worked on the flight model for this aircraft. Is that what you said?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so when I came to Montreal back in 2008, so I'm originally German, as everybody can guess with my accent.
No.
So I came here in 2008 and I did a PhD in flight controls at McGill University. So since
Mm.
then I have a good contact with them. I actually sometimes teach a class. I'm actually teaching a class there at the moment on like flight aircraft performance, stability and control. It's like a very high
Mm.
overview. And so because of that, I have the contacts there. And then, yeah, I told my former PhD supervisor, look, we have this idea. And I wanted to do the flight model, but a flight model always comes with a ground model, and ground modeling is not really my area of expertise.
Mm.
So he found a student for me who then actually did the ground model. And I was really happy with that guy's work. So shout out to Jakob here. That was really well done. And so yeah, and like that, we then ended up, I had the engine model, I got the ground model from the student. The flight model is something I could do easily based on work I did for my PhD, so I could actually take some of that and put it in there. And yeah, so we ended up with a whole set. The only thing we're not modeling yet is the atmosphere. So atmospheric data, pressure, density, wind, etc., that we take from MSFS. And we have to because we need to match the MSFS weather, right? So we can't actually model that ourselves.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm the
Man.
end user, and I'm using the airplane, going, yeah, this
Mhm.
thing's done, it's finished, needs no more work. But you're saying that you guys have more to do behind the scenes that we don't really notice as much, or you have a lot more to go, or just some cleanup work.
Well, there's a few loose ends to tie up, which I guess would fall into cleanup. I think overall the product has functionally reached a level of maturity that I'm quite happy with. Like the thing is, it's our first release on this platform, so we released on Thursday, and basically all of Thursday and Friday was bracing for, okay, so what did we miss? What major catastrophe is going to happen? And funnily, it didn't come. So
Hmm.
it's,
Wow.
so there was quite a relief, to be honest, that like, okay, no, it actually seems to work for most people. I mean, there are gonna be every product has teething issues, right? So there's gonna be some small things. I already mentioned to you earlier. Seems that there's some people, but not you, for example, who have freezes after 4 to 6 hours. So that's something we have to investigate. But then you have the autosave. So if you should be among the unfortunate people who encounter that, then we'll just close FMS, restart from the autosave, and continue your flight as if nothing ever happened, right? So, but yeah, that's one thing, and there's a few other things I have on my list that I still want to clean up. So, but overall, I think it was a very successful release. And the nice thing is that we promised all our X-Plane users a round of updates, so I'll be able to focus on that very, very soon. And a lot of the things we now did for MSFS are gonna come back into X-Plane too, like the whole EFB changes with like the Navigraph, the sim brief, all that stuff that we had done there. All of that is gonna come back to X-Plane with the next round of updates. It was actually developed in X-Plane and then brought over to MSFS.
Oh
Oh wow.
wow.
Okay.
Wow. So
It's good to know.
okay, that's cool. So it
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
you're
like the release itself. I mean, we're only about a week after, or a little less, I guess.
no
no,
Or
two
no, sorry, a
days.
2
couple
days,
days, a couple days
48
after
hours.
after
2 days
the
in, yeah.
release. I'm thinking about the streamers. So when they got the
Yeah.
embargo, but so it sounds like, I mean, I feel like not many developers can say that they had like a catastrophe free release. So like outside of that, like how else has the release been? How has community feedback been? How has industry feedback been? Like how are you feeling about the aircraft? Are you really happy about where it stands?
Um, well, I think it has been overwhelmingly positive. I generally try to stay away from the internet in these cases. I like other people filter it and tell me the shit that I need to know. Like all the rest, I just decide to ignore. Like whenever there's something that I need to fix, I'll be happy to hear about it. But yeah, all the rest I ignore. But from what I've gathered from the people who do follow these things, I also known as my wife, it seems that it went overall really smoothly. So the overall feedback is overwhelmingly positive. And again, it's the version 1.0.0, right? So we know that, for example, in the 3D, we have a plan on how to like improve some of the 3D items. The flaps is like, I think, the most obvious one, where because of issues with flex and wing flex, etc., the animation did not quite end up like we wanted it to be. But this is like, I think, number 2 on the priority list. So, and those things, and then let's give it a month or two, and I think then we've ironed out really all the important things.
And
Uh,
Then
I was gonna say real quick, like kind of let's just get straight to it. Like the biggest thing I've seen feedback wise from the community and even flying myself has been the wing flex. And you kind
Mhm.
of mentioned it, how you're going to be trying to work on fixing it. So, what is causing kind of like the Flappy Bird wing flex? Like I know it probably wasn't your intention to look the way it is right now, but like, can you kind of explain the issue? What's going on there?
now, okay, the wing flex is there's two things, right? There's the animations itself, which is on the 3D team, but then there is the way how much the wing flex deflects, and that is more or less on me, and that is a question on how people think the time constant should be. So basically what I model is, if you go back to physics and you have a mass, a spring and a damper and you excite it, then it goes like, right? So that's basically what we've modeled. And I guess if people, from what I get with your Flappy Bird, you find it too fast, then I just have to make the time constants and that slower. So I've designed that basically on how I believe it should be. But if the majority of users finds it too fast, then we just change the parameters in that. But that's one thing. The other thing was like getting all the animations with the surfaces and the wing flex, etc., so that when the wing flexes, that the surface flex with it, etc., which is the cause for our flap, the issues from what I understood. So that's something that's going to be the 3D team. They're going to make a nice flap animation with like all the mechanics underneath, etc. And yeah, then if the wing flex from the dynamics is not liked, then we'll adapt that on the code side. So that one would be on me.
Good, good. A question for you, just a general question. Not sure if you can answer, but would you say that the partnership, as far as the development and work is concerned with Aerosoft, is 50-50, 60-40, 70-30? Who does most of the work or less of the work, or it doesn't work like that? How's that?
No, it's hard to say. We really split it based on core competency, I would say. So I
Right.
mean, we at Tollis, we are known to be really good for flight dynamics, flight systems, autopilot, etc. We are not so known for our 3D work. Whereas Aerosoft, on the other hand, they're really known to have good 3D models, good artwork, etc. But their systems in the past have been the weak point of their product. So that's really why we've just said, okay, look, for us, the perfect combination is Aerosoft is doing all the artwork, we are doing all the systems, and then putting numbers in terms of percentages to that is really difficult to do. So it's just like we've split it by area of expertise, basically.
I got you. I got
So
you.
in a way, I guess it's like the heartbeat of the plane is what you've worked on, like the systems, but everything you see is what Aerosoft has done.
Exactly, except for the displays. I mean, the
Right.
displays,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're part of the systems, they're rendered by us, but everything that's 3D artwork and the sounds are from them, and like special effects, like when with the contrails, etc. That's all stuff that Aerosoft does, which is also good because I have absolutely no idea how to do that in MSFS. You know, like I mean, I know how to do that in X-Plane, but in MSFS, the learning curve would have been huge in order to actually be able to do that. So
Whole
So
different
I had
language.
another question
yeah.
that earlier you mentioned again that you and some students, your students at the university, developed a flight model. So we talk a lot about flight model in flight sim, even though most of us know nothing about flight models.
Mm-hmm.
But can you, as like an expert, like I feel like you're the first flight model expert that I ever got to talk to. Can you, in layman's term, kind of explain how you even make a flight model for an aircraft? And like how do you tune it and where do you get your data from? Do you get feedback from real pilots or is it completely all numbers? Like can you kind of explain a bit like how what goes into making a flight model?
Oh, that's a interesting one. So, well, oh God, where do you start? It's a big topic, right? So there's numerous different philosophies on how you can do it. There's like those there's basically the explain way of doing it, which is where you chop your wing into a million different pieces, or not a million, but like 10 different pieces, and then you assess each piece individually. Then there's the MSFS way, which is more table-based. So an MSFS is more like the old linearized way where you put table values. This is my lift, the amount of lift I have with this angle of attack and things like that.
Hmm.
I've actually, because I really like the X-plane way of doing it, because it has the big advantage that as the aircraft moves through the air, that for each segment of the wing, you calculate the local speed, because when the airplane rotates, like one wing is faster than the other, right? Or if it rolls, the angle of attack on the wing going down goes up because you get an airflow from below. So by chopping it into all these little segments, you can cover all these effects. So this is like basically the approach that we've taken. So our wing is chopped into, I believe, 8 segments, if I'm not mistaken. And for each segment, you calculate based on the current motion, what's the angle of attack, what's the local speed, and then what are the respective lift, and what's the direction of the lift, etc. And that really allows to cover all those little dynamics like Dutch roll, etc. really well. So then the question is, how do you tune that? Where do you get the data from? That's actually the biggest and the most interesting question. There are some things you can derive from the geometry. There exists a few books. Actually, the class that I'm teaching now, the students actually have to do exactly that for like aircraft that they choose. So basically, based on the geometry, you can, for example, straight away get how much does your lift change as your angle of attack changes. That is the so-called lift curve slope, and that one you can get purely from the geometry because that is a analytical result. I mean, there's always percentages of difference in real life due to characteristics, but the basic works like that. So you start from that, and then for drag is a big one. You gather whatever performance data you can get, and then you try to derive the drag from that. So it's a long process, and I've been doing that. I mean, I've tuned the model for X-plane years ago. And basically, you use, of course, the work I did at that time as the input into this work, right? So it's not, you don't reinvent the wheel every single time. But
So
it's, yeah.
as far as how that would feel to just an average simmer like myself, I mean,
Mhm.
I describe the difference when people ask me what's the difference between X-Plane and Microsoft, is that X-Plane feel a little bit more fluid. Would that be a good way to describe how the difference, how it feels, or to
I
the
would
end user, or how?
I would say less on rails. Like it has all these little effects. Like you have like the it's and mathematically speaking, it's the first order effects and the second order effects. And a lot of the flight models they neglect these second order effects where it's like combinations of different things. That's why it's called second order. And those, in my view, it's these second order effects that make an airplane feel alive. And if you take a linearized model, you only have like the first order effects. So those are then neglected. I mean, I didn't look enough at the current MSFS flight model. So I would believe that they have all the second order effects in the meanwhile too. But like very early flight simulators neglected those just also for computational reasons, right? Because it's very complicated or very, it's computationally more intensive. And in the 90s, that didn't exist. I don't know how far they've come in the meanwhile, but this is really what makes an airplane feel alive is that you feel like as you yaw that the right wing wants to lift and those things and all the effects that come with that is really what makes then a difference. That it feels like it's a living,
Alive.
not a living being,
I,
but yeah,
I like
but
that
it
word you
feels.
used, alive, because I think that really does explain what it feels like to fly an aircraft in X-plane. And we'll be specific, your aircraft, because you've made them right in X-plane. It does actually feel alive when you're on approach. And in Microsoft, it feels like you're flying a mannequin in a way. Like it has the
Jeez.
shape of a person, right, of a living being, but it doesn't feel like it's fully involved in the environment. So I want to talk about environment next because again, you're one of the few people we were able to talk to who has experience with working with both platforms. And you mentioned how you had to still use much of the Microsoft Flight Sim environment because you needed that data, right? So like,
Mhm.
how is that different? But with working with X-plane and the X-plane's environment as far as weather, the ground effect, things like that versus Microsoft Flight Sim, and like what data did you have that you not have that you had to make your own, things like that.
Yeah, that's need to weigh my words here, but like I grew a few years older trying to figure out some things in Microsoft, which can be due to my lack of experience, but some things are also really, let's say, hard to get. So one thing that I always mention is just knowing where the ground is of the aircraft turned out to be a huge problem. And because we have our own custom flight model, an input that has to come from the environment is where's the ground. Because so I cannot just assume the ground is here and then the airplane lands and then you see it like going like 10 meter under the ground level. That would not look very good, right? So where my flight model thinks the ground is and where the ground is actually drawn, those two need to match. In X-plane, that's easy. There's one function where you can query the scenery and it gives you the ground to like a fraction of a millimeter exactly. In Microsoft, this turned out to be a really difficult challenge because they don't really provide a function like that. So after I think I went through 6 iterations until I came up with a model that you guys have now, which again, knock on wood, seems to be working well. I haven't had any complaints about it yet in the first 48 hours, so that means it's doing its job. But effectively, what we ended up doing is that you see the landing gear that we've modeled that is in my flight model. So that is what actually drives the physics that you feel. But we've basically put fake landing wheels into the aircraft model of MSFS, and then I see how much are those compressed. And those touch down a long time before the airplane touches down. And that then allows me to know, okay, I'm at this height, this is how much these fake gears are compressed. So now I know the ground is at this level and I can then use that for my ground model. And I'm not kidding you, that took me at least 6 months to come up with a viable solution there, just for
Wow.
that.
And you were kind of
So,
mentioning this before we started recording, but that's the reason why people may see that their landing rates are higher than they expect
correct.
because the landing rate plugins we're using are detecting the aircraft touching down. What do you think? Like maybe like a second, maybe earlier than it actually is, or a half second?
Well, it's probably a meter before. So basically, yeah, this is something that is, I think, interesting for everyone. So because these landing rate plugins, or well, plugin is an explain word, but yeah, these add-ons that read your landing rate, they check the sim on ground flag. So the sim on ground flag just says, okay, the aircraft is now on ground, and I think that one triggers when my fake gears hit the ground. So the ones that are used to determine how high the terrain under the aircraft is. And so that means that you are probably actually still 5 or 10 feet above the ground by the time that this flag goes from false to true. And that's then what your landing rate plugin is going to tell you as touchdown rate. So there's something where then the community will have to adapt a little bit because we cannot set the sim on ground flag. That one is read only. So I cannot tell the aircraft, the simulator we're still in air because its own flight physics believes it's on ground now. So that's something where those add-ons would then have to read like our gear compressions. Like we have LVARs that give you how much are the gears actually compressed. And when those go from 0 to 0.01, it's in meters, something like that, then those guys would have to take the vertical speed at that point in time rather than the one when MSFS believes the aircraft has hit the
Does
ground.
does this translate over into the weight that you feel of the airplane on taxi? Because there's some airplanes in Microsoft that are heavy planes, big planes, but
Mhm.
they still taxi like they're light planes. But with the A340, you feel the weight in the taxi when you're taking corners and so forth. Would that be the same thing, or something else you had to work out to get the feeling heavy?
Well, I always I honestly am not sure how that works, that you have a heavy airplane that when you apply the flight physics correctly, that then feels light, to be honest.
Hmm. Right.
But I think it's just a question of having having the right inertia values. So I honestly, I simply can't answer the question. It just came out of the model that we built that it is like that, basically, right? So,
Nice.
and I would think that maybe MSFS inherited still some of the flight physics from the very olden days, FSX, FS98. I mean, that's like a typical way how Microsoft operates, right? They always keep like downwards compatibility and stuff, and they just move on. So maybe there are still some simplifications in the MSFS model that cause this effect that date back to those very early times. Because normally, I mean, airplane, when you look at it, the 340 weighs 380 tons, or what is that in pounds? Like 800,000 pounds, something like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And if you want to rotate that, that takes a lot of force. I mean, and your landing, I mean, your nose landing gear is, well, okay, it doesn't fit on the screen. It's bigger than that, but it's not compared to the size of the airplane. It's teeny tiny. And then this whole concept that you put the tiller in and the nose wheel is supposed to be able to rotate that airplane instantly, that like you're going straight, you suddenly go to going to the right side. That just doesn't work from a physics point of view. It's just not possible. It's gonna start slipping at some point.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, this is I don't know how. I really, yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's just like when you apply the physics, that's what comes out of it, you know?
You said
That's
it
good.
took you 6 months just to get that landing
Mhm.
right. How long did it take you to actually like? Well, I know you made it technically. You made the flight model back for X plane, isn't that right? But
Mhm.
like, how long did that take to make the flight model? Whether it was for like whenever you did it, how long did it actually take you to develop the flight model for the A340?
Ooh, the thing is in X-plane, because it's basically what I described earlier, right? That there are ways that are very well documented. There you can take the geometry of the aircraft and derive a lot of parameters from it. X-Plane actually does that for you. So basically, that's the thing. When you put it in PlaneMaker and you put the exact right size of the wing, you put where the H-stub is, etc., it actually calculates those things for you. So I did not really have to worry too much about that because the tool does it for you. Whereas when you write your own flight model, you have to do it yourself. But the thing that takes a bit of time and X-Plane is tuning, like basically that, okay, at this angle of attack I have this much lift, at this angle of attack I have this much lift, etc., so that your approach pitch is correct, your cruise pitch is correct, and all those things. And but it is basically PlaneMaker does a lot of the job for you, so that went actually reasonably fast.
So and what about the Microsoft version of it? How long did that take?
Well, I didn't actually. That's the thing. I didn't. Well, I didn't use the Microsoft flight.
Oh, that's right.
Dynamics thing because we did our own, right?
Right.
Adapting it for it. Because the funny thing is, once you actually know what goes on behind the scenes, because I've written the code, then you can basically, I put up a big Excel table where I then could put all the values in and just say, okay, at this angle of attack, I want this amount of lift. And then you tune all those, because I told you I had cut the wing into multiple segments, and you tune all those segments in a way that your Excel table tells you, okay, this is what you get. And then surprise, surprise, you put it in and it did actually work. So the math between the two matches.
Wow.
And so like that, it's been a while, so it's hard to say, but it's probably, I would think, 2 months really for the tuning of a model for one airplane. So that's why for the time being we only have it for the 340, but technically it's something I should be able to expand to other products too, because it's the way we do it is generally you have everything that's airplane specific in one file and everything that's generic in another, and then you need to redo the file that's airplane specific, right?
So it sounds like it will be easier in plane development to basically build out the entire aircraft systems and flight model in X-Plane and then move it over and adapt it to Microsoft Flight Sim. I mean, I don't know. Am I wrong by saying that, or does that have any truth to it?
That's what I do. Like as I mentioned, right? The Navigraph and SimBrief interface was actually developed in XP. So then I developed that in X-Plane, and then, but again, already using this concept of everything that's platform independent goes here, everything that's platform dependent goes here, and then you again just swap the platform dependent part out for MSFS related.
Very nice.
So what, like, of all the systems, what system took the longest to, like, you said it took you guys about 2 years to kind of develop this product, the A340. What would you say you spent the most time on?
Well, if you the 2 years that we're talking about is the transition of the 340 that already exists and X-Plane to Microsoft, right? And those items, what really took me the longest, as I mentioned, was finding out where the ground is. There was really a long delay that caused, and then well, the other thing was the learning curve. First of all, understand how MSFS works, understand how I can get data from it and how can I feed them back, how I can debug it on site, etc. That probably took me a year, but I mean, that's normal, right? I mean, when I started in X-Plane, I started in 2005, 2006. So at that time, I didn't do great things either, right? You started small, and now 20 years later, I know the product, I know how to use it, I know how to handle it. And for MSFS, I had to go through this whole learning phase rather, let's say, accelerated speed. And so that took a lot of time. And yeah, the ground was one of the big ones, and one of the other ones is weather. This is, for example, something we want to see if we can improve that in the future. In X-Plane, I have the possibility to write like the QNH, the temperature, the wind layers and stuff. So when you load a situation through the EFB, it sets and explains the weather that it was when the situation was saved. So you'll recover from the same conditions. In MSFS, we have not yet found a way to do that because the weather engine in MSFS is not that accessible. So there's maybe ways to do it like by writing there's these weather preset files, WPR, so maybe create a weather preset file and then force reading that in, but I'm not even sure if that's possible. So that's one thing I personally find I'm not super happy with yet, is that the fact that when you load a situation, the weather is not reinstated. So which means if you go from a situation that was saved with tailwind and now you load it and then suddenly there's a headwind, you're going to be in full-blown overspeed, right? Because the speed that is stored is the ground speed over ground, and now suddenly you have like 100 knots more on your pitot. And yeah, so those are the things, but it's all small things, right? You can, products like these I've come to accept years ago that they're never complete. I always find it funny when people say, "Oh, they released an incomplete product." Yeah, well, there's not gonna be such a thing as a complete Airbus. Forget it. Like, I mean, it's like 10,000 engineers that worked 10 years to build the original. How do you
Wow.
think, how do you think, like in a small community like this, one or two, or I mean, some companies have 5 guys, maybe 10, are supposed to reproduce that in half a year or in a year?
Mm.
It's just not possible.
I'm gonna remember that. That's
Me
gonna be a
too.
good quote for me to remember to people. How do you? I've seen this in the chat. Somebody says, "How is it that you can get your airplane stable and not have WASM crashes as
Mm.
compared to other newly released product? How is it working with WASM? And I don't know. How is that?"
Well, WASM, the nice thing that was good for us, WASM is based on C, right? Or C and C++. And
Mm.
my entire explain code is all written in C or C++.
Mm.
So, and that brings us back to what I mentioned earlier, that basically our job was to separate everything out that was explained and then put respective MSFS functions in. But the base functions that we use, like the backbone that simulates the airplane, has been tested over years, right? So that one has been tested and matured and explained for, well, the 340 is out since 2021, I believe. So it has been matured over 5 years. So the risk for crashes comes primarily from the new interfacing with MSFS, like this new blob that we had to create for that. And that is a much smaller task than if all the systems had to still be debugged too, because the systems have already been debugged, basically, right? I
Mm.
mean, we added a lot of new things to MSFS, so there is always still the risk. But yeah, it's not the same thing as when you start from scratch, right?
Very nice. Now, if you don't mind, we could step back because some people might not have heard the story, but how did you come to start developing airplanes in a simulator? Were you a simmer? Did you fly like, FSX, P3D, X-Plane? How did it start?
Actually, I was. Well, okay. If we go very long back, when I was a kid and I had an Amiga 500 still, then later Amiga 1200. Like most of the young people don't even know anymore what that
I
is.
don't know what that is.
I started writing in assembler of all languages. That was like not so smart decision. A simulator back when I was like 10 years old. Like tried to write one, but it never got anywhere. Right? Like it was totally impossible to write what I wanted to do on an Amiga at that time. Like completely out of the bounds. So I had a panel. I had like the primary flight display, engine display, and it kind of flew, but the flight dynamics of a 10-year-old are not necessarily
Hold on.
realistic.
You
So you
tried
try to write a
creating a
flight
simulator
sim at
at 10
10?
years old?
Yeah, but it didn't. As I mentioned, it didn't go anywhere.
Wow.
My
Where
But
God.
did the love
anyway,
of airplanes come from? Even before that, where did you
Yeah, like
like
how
why
did
why a
that get
flight
going?
simulator and not
okay.
like, the game or something?
Well, okay. So where does the love of airplanes come from? I don't know. It's like where it's. I know there's just people who are like that, I guess. But when I was 10, like so, I'm born 78, so it was around 88 was when Airbus released the A320, and that was a very big release is the wrong term. They actually launched it, right? It's like it's not a
Right.
software. It's a real
And were
thing.
you in
Anyway,
Germany at the time when this
I
happened?
was in Germany. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So, and I was actually I've grown up in Hamburg, which is the second biggest Airbus site in the world, right?
Mm.
So, so it was very big in the news at that time, and there was a lot of news reporting also about the fly-by-wire system, like where
Mm.
they said like it was the first civil airplane where computers were in charge rather than the pilot, right? And at that time, it was a very controversial thing, of course, because people were a bit scared, like, oh, computers are going to be in charge. And but it was, I mean, okay, the Germans don't have the same level of national pride as the French do, but I mean, the French were like totally through the roof. But the Germans, they were proud of it too, you know. And so I read about it and I found like, oh, that's cool. And so that's where basically my love from the 320 comes from that time. They thought first of all was the first time that a European company went against like the two big ones in the US, right? Boeing and McDonnell Douglas at that time. And actually, if you look at going back to the 80s, look at the cockpit of a 320 and the cockpit of a 737 in that case, one of the two looks clean. Like,
Yeah.
like it's and that was like where all of that came from. And that was actually thought, cool, I want to have that on my computer. And then I bought, I bought a product which at that time was called Airbus A320. I don't know if you know that, but it was an Amiga, Atari, and I think it existed on PC2 at that time. And it came actually with like a real booklet of Jeppesen charts for approach charts. So the booklet was
Wow.
Oh,
almost
wow.
better than the software, because I mean in the 80s nobody had a chance of getting access to Jeppesen charts at that time, right? Other than the real airlines.
Right.
So and basically that's how it started. But then, well, it was when I was 10, 12, something like that. But then, yeah, at some point I noticed it's not going to go anywhere. But then I started gliding actually as a hobby. So I've did that for 16 years. And when the kids came, I didn't have the time anymore. So I stopped, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe now the kids are older, we can start it again at some point. And yeah, but then I went to university, studied aerospace engineering. So everything was always very airplaney.
Right.
And I really started this project then when I came back from New Zealand in 2003. So I did my degree in Stuttgart in Germany, and during that time I went twice to New Zealand, once in 2001 for an internship, and then in 2003 for my final year project. And in 2003 was Lord of the Rings, and Air New Zealand had gotten their first A320, because Air New Zealand was an all Boeing company until then. They had gotten their first A320
Wow,
in
they were, huh?
2003.
Yeah.
And the first one they painted in Lord of the Rings colors, so with like Arwen and Eowyn on it and stuff like that. And as I left the country, I actually saw that thing in Auckland Airport, like basically as I was flying out. And then I came home. I thought like, oh man, I really miss New Zealand and blah. And yeah, so it would be cool to have this A320 on I think FSX at that time. And then I tried to figure out, it didn't exist, tried to figure out how to make an airplane FSX, couldn't figure it out. And then I came to the X plane where this plane maker existed. And then I had like something that, well, we're talking 2004, 2005 here, that something that roughly resembled an A320 in a few days, while working at the
Wow.
same time,
A
just doing
few
it in the
days.
evenings. Well, yeah, I mean, look, again, no fly-by-wire, no systems, nothing, right? Just the outside shape and the wings type of
Right.
thing,
Right.
and
Right.
like a bit of paint on it.
Modeling. Right. Right.
Yeah, and that's really how it started. And then, but I was working at that time at Airbus, didn't have much energy, was not very good at programming C at that time. I had learned some of it in the scope of my diploma thesis, because we use MATLAB Simulink a lot at universities, and there in Simulink you can put C programs in to accelerate your process, which I used during my final year project. So I had the basics of C and stuff, and then when I started my PhD, I suddenly had time. So and then that's really when it started, and I thought like I had then learned how to do plugins, etc. And so that's when it started, and literally since then it's just been moving.
Right.
So the real kickoff, let's say, was 2008 when I started my PhD.
So plane maker basically
Wow.
give you that leg up to start. Yeah.
Plane maker and X-plane. If I had to be, I think if I had been stuck with FSX at this time, this would not have happened. So
Yeah.
it is really, the plane maker tool is very easy to use. Anybody who wants to build an airplane can do it. And it is actually used by companies too to do accessibility studies. Actually, as I mentioned earlier, plane maker takes the geometry of the aircraft and then assesses how it flies based on the geometry. And there are actually companies that use that for like initial design studies, because for initial design studies, it's precise enough. Then later on, you need to go into, when you need to go into more detail, then it doesn't work anymore. But like for a very initial assessment, it's actually really cool. So it's a great tool.
So I got news, I think last year, that Tollis was actually working with Airbus. Is that something you can
Not
talk
working
about
with,
at all? Or
well, they're one of our commercial customers, right? So it's very funny, but it's of course we cannot say exactly what it's being used for, but I think what I can say, because we asked them the question like, don't you have your own internal software? And yes, of course they do, but they do not have software that is user friendly like that you can put anyone in front of it and just use it. Because they have, like every one of these airplane manufacturers, they have a million simulation applications for each different purpose, right? So when I was working at Bombardier in flight controls from 2012 to 2018, and there I worked with some of these internal tools that Bombardier has, and like I did some controllability studies for Global 7000 and the C series, and those tools, they require training in order to be able to use them. Like it's a command line tool where you then it plot then you get all the data and stuff. Something where you just say like you have a graphical user interface and you can actually almost you can play around with it, is not necessarily something that big aircraft manufacturers have. So that's why, and they ended up saying, look, it's good enough. You know, it's the accuracy is the level that they need, and it is user friendly so that you can just put it there and people can use it straight away without any issues.
How do they find you?
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
Like,
did,
how did,
did they just say, "Hey, by the way, this is Airbus," and you're like, "Nah, this is spam. Ignore email." You know?
Well, they sent us an email, right? Like they went like, yeah, we like these products and we would like to use them internally. How does that work? Because I mean, it says everywhere not for commercial use, right? So like what the licenses that we sell, they are only for your personal home entertainment use. And if you want to use it in any kind of commercial setting, then yeah, you need to talk to us for a different type of license.
Right.
so
Wow.
that's like a full circle moment for you. Like, what was that like? Because you talked about in your story how you were like, as a kid, you saw the Airbus 320 launch and how excited you
Yeah.
were, and how that inspired you to make a little plane simulation at 10 years old. And now, many years later, Airbus sends you an email like, "Hey, I want you to help us." Like, what was
Yeah,
that
no.
like? Like, how excited were you about that?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? It's like there's always a certain how you call that? It's
Was it nerve
as
wracking?
no, as the person who develops the airplane, basically, I mean, I have my to-do list, right? Which is like long like this. So I basically know everything I want to work on that I still want to improve. And so like that, as the person developing it, you basically never think it's good because it's never where you want it to be, right? It's always there's always so, and that then there's always this surprise thing then when suddenly companies come, yeah, we want to use it. It's so, okay, why? You know, like I still have like the version in 2 years maybe, but not this one. But then in 2 years, it's going to be the same story again, because in 2 years, I'm again going to have a to-do list this long, just with different items, and then it's going to be the same thing. So at some point, you just have to accept, okay, it seems to be not a bad product, you know?
Yeah. Well, you have validation from Airbus. Like, yeah, we
So,
want to use your product, which is good.
yeah.
That is awesome,
So,
man. That is absolutely awesome. Definitely. So, are you looking forward to any future products or continue to working in the Microsoft environment at all?
our next product itself is gonna be like, I mean, that has been announced for a long time, and because the 340 took longer than anticipated, like this, the next one is the 350 with flight factor on X-plane, right? So that's very clear.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, we do have this setup now that our stuff can run on MSFS at the moment only with the 340. But I mean, the effort to now increase that to other aircraft is significantly less than this initial effort was to make it work once, right? So once you've got it running once, making it run more again on a different platform is much easier. So there will be something coming there, but we do not know any details at this point in time. And now really the focus is get the updates out for X-Plane and then do the 350, because the 350 is actually also something where we have a lot of like the commercial requests that we get. A lot of people want the 350, so just for that reason, it's gonna get very high on the list too.
Man,
Besides the fact
you're
that
a big dog.
no, I don't know, but besides the fact that I promised Roman for I don't know how long that we're gonna do the 350, and I've always been like there's always been stuff coming in the way, like always other
Right.
things, and now at some point we just have to say no, it's enough. Now it's 350 all the way, so.
Didn't you work with Flight Factor on version 1 of the 350, bringing in SIDS and stars or something?
The version 1 of the 350 is, well, at that time it wasn't called Tollis yet, it was still QPAC. That was my former employer before I came to Canada, who had like sponsored my development while it was more or less a hobby.
Mm.
So yes, and so the very first version of the 350 has from me the autopilot, the flight management system, the fly-by-wire, and the engine model of that time, which is still an X-plane-based engine model, but like the whole logics around it and stuff were ours. And I think landing gear, if I'm not mistaken. So it has a few items, but like it doesn't electrics, air conditioning, hydraulics, etc. is all flight factor stuff. So, and this is where for the new one, what we want to change is that we really want to take our Airbus system suite, which has really been optimized over years now. And so I want to have all the other systems too, like electrics, hydraulics, the ECAM system. The ECAM system is going to be on the 350 bigger job because it's very different
Yeah.
from the 320 and 340. And we have the base code, so we have the backbone for that, but then feeding that with like 1,000 procedures or so is gonna take some time too. So
Take some time.
yeah,
So how long you think? I mean, this is a tough question to answer, but
yeah,
development time of the
I
350.
don't do
No,
time frames.
I had to ask. I had to ask.
I was like, you know better
Wow.
than that
Yeah,
question.
I know. I had to ask.
I will say,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you know this or if you saw it, but we just interviewed Ramses like a week ago, kind of getting his side, his perspective on his projects as well as the
Hmm.
Flight Factor Tollis A350 as well, and they're kind of like coming off the 777 projects and kind of starting to
Mhm.
slowly, trickle over to the 350. And it sounds like you're kind of freeing up right from your previous obligations as well, so you're kind of both at the same time converging back on to the project at the same time. You've already explained kind of the systems that are going to go into it. I mean, is there anything else that we can expect from you on the A350, like as far as systems wise and autopilot and everything like that?
Well, the 350 is in many systems quite different from the old ones, right? So like 320, 330, 340, there's a lot of similarities, but 350 is gonna be a lot of new things. For example, the electrical system has now 230 volt buses, not just 115. So, but funnily, again, I mentioned I have been dragging out this project, or this project has been in our heads for a long time. So the electrical system is already actually done.
Mm.
But there's other things like hydraulic is now 5,000 psi instead of 3,000, and only two systems instead of three. But then you have like those electrical backup actuators, and so there's a lot of things that will need to be changed, and some of them are already there, some are not. The FMS is gonna be, because our FMS currently is like a mix between revision 1 and revision 2 of the FMS. So this is something that has been on my to-do list for a while too. And I think with the 350, that's finally gonna happen, that I really have to make a clean revision 2 build, because the 350 FMS does have differences quite a lot, like the whole interface is different, right? And so on there, I really have to make sure that all the underlying functionality is Rev 2. And then my goal is, we'll see if we achieve that, but my goal is to split it so that I can then switch in my code between Rev 1 and Rev 2. That you really say, okay, this, and then maybe at some point in the far future, somebody will be able to say, okay, I'm flying an aircraft with Rev 1 or Rev 2, and then really switch between the two. That would be my
That's
long-term
nice.
goal. If that's realistic, I don't know, because it depends really on how many spots there are where you need to switch.
So what
Wow.
happens first? Because you mentioned how like a lot of your commercial clients are asking for the 350, and we know you work with people on the other planes you've made too. But like, are you making these planes like for flight sim first, or are you making them for commercial people first, and then we just get the benefit of a project you've done? Because I know some developers have commercial clients; they'll make a whole plane for them, and then they'll make a home version to use afterwards. Like this, which one comes first for you, or is that even in your process at all?
No, we have effectively, we have one product. We have like the aircraft, and then for commercial customers, there are some extras that they get that do not exist in the home user version. Like, for example, if you want to integrate in a simulator, we have this as an extra app that then people can use to draw the displays, etc. At FS Weekend, you'll be able to see that, like Scalaki. I don't know if Scalaki is coming to FS Weekend with the 330, but in any case, companies like Scalaki or CP Flight or so, they all use that already. So that makes like drawing of the displays easier. But the fundamental airplane is the same between the two. Like so the gaming version, the commercial customers, they get more failures, they get more certain things that are really for this topic of integrating into a simulator. You know, everything that's like hardware related. But it's not that we have a completely different product. Right? The idea is also that if you had a different product, it would be very difficult for one line to benefit from the changes or the improvements you do in the other. So by having it as one with a certain set of features for the Pro line, that makes it easier that everybody benefits from the changes, right? So if we change something in the end user version, it's also gonna come into the Pro version straight away, and vice versa.
So basically, you're saying if you're flying a Tollis product, you're flying a professional product from day one. Yes, I like that. that is good. So I got a question for you guys. The last Flight Sim Expo, how did you manage to get talked into going into an airplane with Ramses and what's his name from
Marco?
Xcraft? So
Marco?
Marco, yeah. So you, Marco, and Ramses, X-Plane's top developers in one airplane for a fun flight. How was that?
Yeah, Ben wasn't happy, Ben Supnik from Laminar, but yeah. No, but look, as I mentioned before, right, I did gliding for 16 years. I have, I think, 600 landings and 300 hours. So you can see it was, in Germany, we do winch launch a lot. So you do a lot of 5-minute flights.
Nice.
But 5-minute flights are actually great because you practice the two most important parts of the flight, takeoff and landing, like a lot. So I have a lot of those. But yeah, since 2011, I basically stopped because family obligations, etc. But so when Roman then came, look, I'm here with my plane, or not his plane, but I think he's CFI, a chief flight instructor at
Yes.
at a flying club in Raleigh, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they brought that plane up to FS Expo, right? And they said, hey, you want to come fly with me? I'm not gonna say no, So if I have the time for it, then for sure. And it was a beautiful day, and so yeah. And then we basically split it. That we flew from Providence Airport to, I forgot the name now. It was some airport somewhere in the middle of the forest with like nobody around. So it was very very interesting. So I did the flight from Providence there, and then the way back was Marco, and basically Ramses or Roman was next to us as flight instructor on both flights. So it was great. It was great
That's
to
pretty
fly
awesome.
a real airplane again rather than just virtual ones. Yeah.
No, that's good. It's good to know that my lead developers in the sims that I fly actually fly a real airplane. It's awesome. Keeps you grounded and back in touch with what it's supposed to be and feel like. So that was awesome, man. Definitely. Blue, you got anything else?
I got a vacuum going, so you're gonna have to ask the
That's all
question.
right.
I was gonna ask, are you like rated in any of the aircraft you've made, like a 320 or something?
No, I'm the license the biggest license I ever had was an aerobatics gliding license. So like I can fly airplanes without. No, that's not true. I had a
Ah,
powered glider license too, so I'm allowed to fly, or I was allowed to fly airplanes with 2 people and an engine, but a gliding ratio of better than 20, I believe, when the engine
jeez.
fails. That's what defines a powered glider is if you stop the fan in the front, you need to have a gliding ratio better than 20, I believe. So that's why I'm allowed to fly. But anything bigger than that, no. And I've started actually a regular private pilot license here at some point, but I came to realize that I enjoy gliding the most simply because it's not so much flying to get from A to B, which depending on the landscape can be interesting or not. It's it's really in gliding you're permanently with the airplane, because you have to look like as you're like thermaling trying to get height, you're already strategizing, okay, where's the next cloud, where can I go to find lift again and stuff, and it's very quiet. You sometimes have birds coming to you actually, because the birds, they're not stupid either, they're lazy, right? So they don't want to have to flap their wings, so they use the same thermals gliders do. And they're smart animals. So at some point they've learned when there's these big plastic thingies with these huge non-flapping wings that are rotating there, it's probably going up. So they actually check it out and stuff. And those are just things that I really enjoy about that sport. So yeah, that's my favorite way of flying actually.
All right. I got a very important question about the 340 that Microsoft seems to didn't crack or anybody else. How did you come up putting the replay in the EFE? Because that's such a big feature that everybody who've had the plane loves it. Instant replay right in the EFB. What made you think about that? How did you come up with that? Was that a request or what?
So it funnily that wasn't in until 2 weeks before release, I believe. It came because our video guy said, "How can I replay this airplane? Like the standard replay features don't work." So then I realized, yeah, okay, so Maurice needs something to do a replay. And the thing is, I mean, it's not that I created a replay tool in like a week or so. The thing is that in Xplane has a native replay function, right? But the replay function of Xplane, of course, only replays Xplane's internal variables. It doesn't replay any of the things that are happening in my code. So since the beginning of this development, like back to 2008, 2009, I always had my own replay running in parallel, actually, because I needed to I basically read, okay, Xplane is now in replay mode. It's at this time, this point in time. And then I had to record all the data that are internal to me that Xplane doesn't know about and fit them into the replay. And so I had all this infrastructure ready to go. I had just disabled it in MSFS, and then I noticed, okay, well, if he needs a replay function, the only thing I need to add is those things that Xplane normally takes care of themselves, which is aircraft position, altitude, and all those things. But because the entire infrastructure was already in place, it was a fairly quick thing to do. But that's again because it has been there for 15 years in the version that runs in Xplane, right? And then
Wow.
I thought, okay, Morris needs it, so I put it in, and yeah, to my big surprise, but actually I've started using it straight away too. It was always one of the things where I realized in MSFS it's sad that you can't review your landing, and
Yeah.
then okay, yeah, now I can.
Yeah.
Okay, good, let's do
Or
it.
you forget to press record, when you're on final
Okay,
approach because you get so busy. And that's all the replay tools in Microsoft now, either external or internally, you have to press record yourself. Having it
okay,
automatically done for you is the game changer. And realize, oh, I can just
yeah.
drag it back. So, I mean, that's good. I mean, what other feature that was not really in Microsoft did you add to the plane itself? Because it seems like there's the autosave, there's the save scenarios, things like that. Anything else that you added to the plane that we haven't even discovered yet? That's not really in Microsoft.
Oh, that's hard to say
I'd
because
say.
my experience with Microsoft is limited, so I don't actually. I've really started using it now since our airplane has become flyable. I've started using it more. Actually, I bought some scenery yesterday for the first time in my life. So no, it's well, I think the jump to waypoint or the skip to waypoint is something new, but that one still requires a little bit of fine tuning too because. So one of the issues that you have is basically when you select the skip to waypoint, you can choose any waypoint in the FMS to go to, right? And then it looks up what is the FMS prediction for the fuel and the time, and it puts the airplane into that position with that fuel and time. But then the weather conditions in that location may be different from where you left from. And that is something that then can destabilize the airplane. So, and I'm not sure if this is something we can really iron out completely, or if this is something that users will have to accept that if you jump like halfway around the world and the wind and the pressure and everything changes completely, you will have to guide the airplane back onto the path and the right altitude, etc., because your speed and your altitude, etc., are not going to be where they would be in those weather conditions, which brings us back to not being able to read the weather in MSFS. But so this is the one downside, but I think it's seeing that you are saving like 10 hours of cruise, having to like for 1 minute stabilize the airplane again and bring it back on path is a small price to pay for that. So we'll see how much we can improve that. But yeah, there's always gonna stay a little bit of a hiccup because yeah, again, if your wind changes from tailwind to headwind, you're gonna go over speed. The other way around, you're gonna go under speed. So it's
Right. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. The rumblings in the community, because I read
Yeah.
all the chat, listen to all the comments, is
Mm.
like, please, they're begging to see if it's possible for you guys to continue a relationship with Aerosoft and do another
Mm.
product with them. And the big one is because you have the A330 in X-Plane, and it's the best A330 in any flight simulator. Would love to see that in Microsoft Flight Simulator as well. I know you can't give away products or time or but we would love to see you guys in Microsoft again on another product, any one of these products. You bring a different atmosphere to the sim, to be honest, with the way you do things. So any maybe working relationships with anybody else coming up that we don't know about?
As I said, like it's always first of all, as Tollis, we never talk about future projects until they're
Right,
ready. That's like our base philosophy, and
right.
because of that, we never missed the release date until now because we announce the release date when it's ready, right? So like look again, the only thing I can say is the biggest part of the work for making our stuff work in MSFS is done. We will try to leverage that. That's
Good,
all I can say,
good,
so, but
good.
there's nothing specific, nothing else that I can say, unfortunately.
That's good to hear. I would hate to see all that good work go to waste because you guys
Yeah,
spend a
no,
lot
it
of
would
time
be
on
sad.
it. It would be
Although the
sad.
340-600 is my personal favorite airplane, but yeah,
Oh, is
so, but
it?
so, yeah,
Ah,
I really, well, four engines is more fun than two, like more
true.
things to start and stuff. And
That's true.
um, no, and I just find from the aesthetics point of view, I find it is the most beautiful Airbus has done type of thing.
Yeah,
So I
the wing
find
view
it.
on the 340 is really nice. Yeah, looking at those two engines.
Yeah, and also looking at it from the outside, I just find like the long slender wing. I always compared it with the Swan a little bit, like it's when you compare it with the 380, which looks like they banged it into the hangar door forward and
Right.
rearwards and just like compressed it like this.
Yeah,
So the
true.
340 is really like a nice proportioned
Good,
airplane.
good, good. All right, one last question. Career mode. I've had people say, "Hey, is this available in career mode?" And what would it take to make a plane like this available in career mode? Is that a Microsoft thing or is that a developer thing? Do you know?
I don't know. I would
Don't
have
know.
to actually
Okay.
read up about that. So our goal now was get the airplane out there, make sure that people can fly it. And this whole career mode thing, yeah, I would have to see how that works. I guess you have to add some files where you could then add it like that it becomes part of this whole career path planning. But I have not yet started career mode in MSFS ever, so I don't even know how that works.
Me
So,
neither. Me neither.
so,
Right.
so
And I'm not sure. Is it available on Xbox or is it going to be available on Xbox or just PC
it's
only?
it's our goal, but to make it available on Xbox, I think we need to get a 24 native build out, if I understood that correctly. So at the moment, when you run it in 24, you run it in 2020 compatibility mode. We are working on this 24 native build, and then we have to see. But technically, although there is no identified roadblock as to why it wouldn't work on Xbox, because we use everything in WASM. There's no like external applications that are required or something like that. So we've
Mm,
done everything exactly by the book as per Microsoft SDK. So, but we have to test it on Xbox before we can promise that it's going to work, or I have to then see how much needs to be changed for it to run on Xbox.
awesome, awesome, awesome. When are we going to see Tollis merchandise?
We already have that actually on our website, I believe.
Oh, do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay,
like
good.
this
I'm gonna
one,
visit
you
it.
can order on the website. Yeah. We also have like hats. We have we have like a few cups, etc. Are you guys coming to FS Weekend or?
Unfortunately, no FS Weekend, but FS Expo definitely. Will
Okay.
you be at FS Expo? That's the question. Do you
FS
know?
Expo most likely not. We're going to FS Weekend, but then
Okay,
FS Expo does not fit into our time schedule this year necessarily.
I got you. So now we're
But
gonna have to visit Europe. We definitely have to go to FS Weekend every year going forward from
it's
this one.
It's beautiful, actually. It's a really nice event. It's like in an old, well, it's at Lelystad Airport, which has this big aviodrome museum with like a old KLM 747 that you can visit, like, and really walk around it and everything. So it's a nice place. So FS Weekend is highly recommended.
Awesome, awesome. Thorsten, we appreciate you taking the time out early in the morning to come record with us, get on a podcast. But thank you so much for what you've done for the community, Microsoft and Explain, both. And we
My
appreciate you,
pleasure.
man. Thanks for the time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you anything else you wanted to say to the audience or that we missed?
Yeah, I'm not the big speaker guy normally, but no, but I mean, thanks for supporting us all those years. In any case, I mean, it's if you guys didn't like our products, I would have stopped a long time ago, right? So it's the feedback itself, like the personal feedback, is very important also, right, for the motivation and everything. So thanks for supporting us. Thanks for working with us, giving productive feedback so that we can actually improve our products as needed. And yeah, looking
Definitely.
forward to lots more in the future. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You and all the team over there at Tollis. Appreciate you guys. Take care. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one. All right, guys.
Thanks
See you
for having
later
us.
on another podcast. Thanks. All right. Bye.